When you think of philosophy, what comes to mind? Dusty old books, big, abstract questions that don't really go anywhere? Well, what if it was something else entirely? What if it was a powerful tool, a toolkit even, for fixing the world's most urgent problems? That's the electrifying idea at the heart of John Dewey's work, and it's a call to action that's just as relevant today as it was a century ago.
Now, look at this quote. It all comes down to one tiny word change, but it signals a massive shift in thinking. See, Dewey wasn't just talking about making a few tweaks in philosophy. No, he was calling for a complete overhaul of philosophy. He was basically saying, hey, this whole enterprise has lost its way, and we need to tear it down and rebuild it from the ground up. So, how exactly did he plan to do that? Well, in this explainer, we're going to follow his roadmap. First up, we'll look at the crisis he saw in philosophy. Then, we'll dig into the root cause, this obsession with certainty. After that, we'll see how a changing world just blew that old view to pieces, which leads us right to Dewey's big idea: philosophy as a powerful tool for rebuilding our world. All right, let's jump right into his diagnosis. So picture this. It's the early 20th century. Dewey takes a look around at what his fellow philosophers are doing, and, well, he's not happy. He's deeply, deeply troubled by what he sees. And this leads him to ask a really crucial question. You've got to remember, this was an era of incredible turmoil. We're talking global wars, massive social change, and what were philosophers doing? According to Dewey, they were retreating. They were looking for a secure refuge, as he put it, from all the chaos and strife of the real world. And in doing that, they were making themselves totally irrelevant.
Yeah, instead of actually engaging with what was happening right then, they were just endlessly rehashing old arguments, debating past systems, and tinkering with purely formal techniques. For Dewey, this wasn't some sign of deep intellectual rigor. Nope. He saw it for what it was, a symptom of fear. A full-on retreat from the messy, complicated, real world into a safe little intellectual bubble.
So you have to ask, why? Why was philosophy in retreat? Well, Dewey argued it wasn't just that they lost their nerve. The real root of the problem went way deeper. It was that philosophy was basically running on an old, completely outdated operating system. And this slide really lays out that central conflict. On one side, you've got the classical worldview, the one we inherited from the ancient Greeks. This idea of a fixed, perfect, closed universe where the whole point is just to sit back and contemplate eternal truths. But then, on the other side, you have modern reality, the world that science showed us. And that's a world that is open, it's evolving, and knowledge isn't about just looking. It's about doing. It's about active inquiry to understand and direct change. The absolute key to this old way of thinking was this ideal of contemplative knowledge. Just think of it as the spectator view of the world. The philosopher's job wasn't to, roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty. Oh no, it was to sit back in a comfy chair and just behold the perfection of a fixed reality. Anything practical, anything to do with the real world, that was considered inferior, kind of base, not worthy of a real thinker.
But then, everything changed. Along came this massive disruption, a revolutionary force that just completely shattered that old, quiet, static picture of the world.
And what was that force? Well, it was the scientific revolution. It starts with Copernicus, who literally knocked the Earth from the center of the universe. And it just kept going, picking up speed with Bacon, Newton, and then Darwin. What science showed again and again was that reality isn't fixed at all. It's a world of process, of motion, of constant evolution. Change wasn't some mistake or a flaw in the system. Change was the system. It was reality. And this whole new way of thinking was summed up perfectly by Francis Bacon. Knowledge is power. I mean, think about how radical that is. It was a complete 180. Knowledge wasn't for just sitting around and admiring anymore. Its purpose was to give us, humanity, the power to actually control, direct, and, transform the world. So how did science get all this power? It wasn't by sitting in an armchair and just thinking really hard. It was by doing stuff. Science proved that if you really want to understand the world, you have to get in there, you have to interact with it, experiment on it,
and see what happens. Knowledge wasn't something you just found, like a lost set of keys. It was something you made through active inquiry.
Okay, so this brings us right to Dewey's big solution, his prescription. The logic is pretty simple, right? If our entire understanding of reality has changed, and the way we get knowledge has completely changed, then it just makes sense that philosophy has to change too. It has to be rebuilt to match this new world. And this forces a brand new question on us. If the goal isn't just to be a spectator anymore, if we're not just watching a fixed universe, then what's the point of thinking? What is it for? Dewey's answer is both incredibly simple and totally profound. Thinking is for solving problems. Period. He gives this new approach a name: experimental intelligence. And the big idea is, let's take the exact same method that worked so amazingly well in science, observation, hypothesis, testing, and let's apply it to all the messy, complicated problems of human life. Let's use it on our morals, our politics, our societies, the whole shebang.
And the process itself is actually pretty straightforward. First, you start with a real specific problem, not some abstract puzzle that doesn't matter to anyone. Then you come up with an idea, a hypothesis for how you might solve it. Now here's the crucial part. You have to test that idea in the real world, through action. You got to do something. And finally, you watch what happens, you look at the results, and you use that to make your idea better. It's this continuous, self-correcting loop of thinking and doing and thinking.
Okay, so what? Why does any of this actually matter? What are the real-world stakes here? What happens when we stop treating philosophy like a quest for absolute certainty and start seeing it as a practical tool for solving problems? Well, the implications are just enormous. If you take this view seriously, suddenly morality isn't some fixed, rigid code handed down from on high. It's a process of growth. The goal of life isn't about reaching some final perfect destination. It's about being in the constant process of perfecting. Democracy stops being just a form of government and becomes a moral ideal for all of society. And maybe most importantly, our ideas and theories, they stop being dogmas we have to worship. They become what they always should have been: tools. Tools that we test, that we use, and that we improve. So in the end, what Dewey's Reconstruction does is give philosophy a brand new vital mission. Its job is to get out of the ivory tower and get its hands dirty in the streets. Its job is to help us understand and navigate the real, messy conflicts of our day-to-day lives. It becomes a practical instrument for building a better, smarter, and more humane world.
And that leaves us with one last, really challenging thought to chew on. If Dewey is right, if our ideas aren't just passive little reflections of the world, but are actually active tools that shape reality, then that puts a huge responsibility on all of us. The most important question isn't just what's true anymore. The real question is, what kind of world are we building right now with the tools we carry around in our own mind?